Hello guys, today is Battleforge or Nimble better versus Beasts? And if you see all the enemies in Battle Bros, they're also animals, so there are war dogs, warhound, wolf, and donkeys. I just ignore them because they are like the weak opponents, right? Like a dog is on the same level as a direwolf, even less so probably. They come in the big noble house fights. They have dogs. I think mercenaries sometimes have dogs and brigand hunters and stuff. So I will just ignore them. You can assume that like one war dog is comparable to a wolf, roughly. Okay, so the question is Battleforge or Nimble overall good versus these kind of opponents? Okay, let's start with spiders. Spiders are the weakest beasts overall, I would say. They have backstabber fast adaptation. So at some point they will hit you. They have the poison, which lets you take hit point damage if you get attacked with the bite. The bite does 20 to 40% damage with 70% armor efficiency and 30% armor pen. So the 70% armor efficiency means, like, if you go below 100% armor efficiency, that means Battleforge is good because these attacks will do 0 damage to Forge, basically. Uh, the thing is, spiders don't have a high damage output. They tend to net you down and tend to not attack that fast. So most of the time you fight them before you have Battleforge or Nimble. The thing is, like, Battleforge makes you basically immune to spiders because of the super low damage with only one attack. So it's low volume of attack with bad armor efficiency and low damage. So um, yeah, Battleforge counters these pretty heavily. Although if you have Nimble, you will probably find because their damage output is really, really low, and as soon as you have a good company, you're gonna smash them. The Spider X, of course, they will spawn spiders. So yeah, Battleforge wins in this matchup, but I wouldn't consider it because Nimble, super weak enemies. They don't do much damage either way. So I would say roughly whatever. Okay, let's go to the direwolves. The direwolves, they have the direwolf bite does 30 to 40, 30 to 50 damage with 70% armor efficiency, 20% armor pen. So low armor pen, low armor efficiency. Again, Battleforge counters these. Of course, you fight them a lot of the time before you have Battleforge. They are super fast. They have a decent amount of defense, and they can attack you twice. So we have a decent amount. Also, they come in large numbers usually. So we have a decent amount of basic attacks that have relatively high damage with bad armor efficiency. So again, in this matchup, Battleforge would win. Although again, the normal direwolves are super weak. Most of the time, you fight them before you have either Nimble or Battleforge. So it's not too bad if you have Nimble. Now we are going on to the Frenzied Direwolf though, and the Frenzied Direwolf are scary. They're even faster, and they have Overwhelm with Executioner, with Berserk, and the Wolf Bite is still the same. So I think that the action point is wrong though. I think the action point is wrong. They can, as far as I know, they can attack you 3 times, the Frenzied ones, if they stand still. Again, the wiki is a little bit outdated sometimes. I'm sorry for that. The thing is, they have Overwhelm, and they have quite a bunch of attacks. Especially these guys can come in really big numbers. So they tend to eat Nimble Bros, sadly. Like high amounts of attacks with like relatively low damage, or like relatively high damage. That stuff counters Nimble. Like you get bitten a couple of times and then your armor is gone and your hit points go. Even with the damage, ignore, the Nimble guys tend to struggle. The thing is, Battleforge with that low armor, like you have to imagine this is like 2 armor. This is like, it's only 70% armor efficiency. Like, so the 30 to 50 damage go to like, gets reduced by a third. So it's like 20 to 40 or something. And then that gets further more reduced by Battleforge. So like one direwolf bite will probably do like 20 armor damage, and that's it. So again, Battleforge completely counters these, and Nimble Bros have to be careful if they get surrounded by multiple direwolves. it's going to be sketchy. Oh, it says it does 1.25 damage. Okay, well, yeah, the frenzied direwolves are overall much scarier than the normal direwolves because of the overwhelm mechanic and their speed. Also, they do a little bit more damage. So again, Battleforge counters these completely. Hyenas is the next, and they are very similar to the direwolves. The Hyena Bite does less damage, but has 100% armor efficiency, 35% armor pen, and causes bleeding. Okay, and here we go. So the armor efficiency is good enough that it's okay versus Battleforge, but the damage is very low and it causes bleeding. So you don't want to take hit point damage because bleeding does not get reduced by Nimble. That means, you don't want to get bitten as a Nimble guy by hyenas. Again, hyenas, because of the bleeding mechanic and the many attacks that they have, they will eat Nimble bros. And as soon as you have like 3 or 4 stacks of bleeding, oh my god. If you can't rotate and bandage your brother or help him any other way, he's probably gonna die. 9 lives is overall pretty good to because it reduces all damage over time effects, so it helps you if your brother gets like bitten 4 times, has 4 bleeding stacks on them, and he would die if he doesn't have 9 lives. So 9 lives counters these kind of bleeding mechanics. Also, they have Backstabber and Executioner, so they will hit you and they will do damage. Pretty nasty, these guys. What's even worse is the Frenzied Hyenas. They are faster, they have Overwhelm, they have Backstabber, Executioner. These are even worse, they do more damage, same as the Direwolf. And all these do bleeding as well. So in these kind of matchup, all of these like low damage, high volume attacks get completely countered by Battleforge, and Nimble tends to struggle versus high volumes of attack in general. Because high volumes of attack will eat your armor fast, and if your armor is eaten, you will take hit point damage fast. Even if it gets reduced by like 40%, you still take hit point damage. And Battleforge wouldn't even take hit point damage after like 20-30 attacks, basically, from the weak ones. Okay, next ones, Nachtzehrers. Nachtzehrers, there are multiple tiers of Nachtzehrers. There are the small, medium, and large ones. The small ones, they come in high numbers, and they have a decent amount of attack and decent amount of defense, actually. They have the Ghoul Claws, the Gruesome Feast, which means they can heal. And here are the attack values. So all of these can attack twice per round, and they have relatively low armor efficiency, basically no armor pen, but relatively high base damage. So again, like Battleforge, high volumes of attack with bad armor efficiency and armor pen, Battleforge is the counter to this. So if you can see, as you can see, like Nimble would tank damage versus these. Like if you get hit a couple of times, even with the medium ones, they hit for like 40 to 60 damage, that's pretty nasty, right? Even if it gets reduced, like if you take a couple of hits, maybe even from the big ones, it's gonna hurt a lot. Also, they can heal and they can eat your bros. And the Devoured Bros takes 10 to 20 hit point damage. You can't straight up die from being devoured. Okay, interesting. The problem with this is the swallow whole mechanic. If one of these tier 3 Nachtzehrers has eaten one of your bros and he runs away, if he runs successfully away and you end the combat, your brother will be dead. So I think this one, you can't straight up die from being devoured. I think this is wrong. Again, the wiki is a little bit outdated. But these small beasts, they get countered by Battleforge, but you fight them early on, most of the time. So a lot of the time you don't even have Nimble or Forge. So Nimble is like, if you have nothing better, it's gonna be okay. And the strategy is to not let them level up to the bigger ones and try to kill a lot of them at the same time. Yeah, again, Battleforge is better in this fight. Next one, snakes. Snakes. Look at them. The snakes have the drag ability, that staggers you. Stagger is pretty bad because stagger reduces your initiative. So a lot of the time your fast nimble bros have dodge. So stagger does counter your dodge. Snakes. Okay, they are kind of ignored to guns. Pretty funny. They have 15 plus 15 initiative overall. They tend to be relatively fast. They have good defense, good attack. They get increased melee defense and increased damage when the time goes by. They have backstabber, but they only can attack once per turn with the serpent bite for relatively high damage with bad armor efficiency and okay armor pen. So that's roughly like the low pike damage, right? The fact that every snake can only bite once and they can't bite if they drag you, that means that they get completely countered by Battle Forged and Underdog, and you need Underdog because they have Backstabber. If you don't have Underdog, they will guaranteed hit you. If you have Underdog, at least you have a chance of dodging their attacks when you are completely surrounded by 6 snakes. Fighting snakes early on is a pretty nasty experience because, again, they are relatively hard to kill, and because of every opponent that can basically dislocate a brother is really strong. Like they can successfully isolate brothers, surround them, and kill them. And you can't really prevent that from happening most of the time. And you can't help them when they are completely surrounded multiple tiles away. So snakes, nasty opponents, lost a lot of bros to snakes, but they get completely countered by Battleforge because we have low volume of attack that does relatively low damage with bad armor efficiency and bad armor pen. These guys, again, they will tear through Nimble Bros, especially if they heavily rely on dodge for their defense. So be mindful with your Nimble Bros when you fight versus snakes. They gonna eat them. Okay, next one. We have Alps. Okay, existing partly in dreams. Alps only come at night, so they are relatively rare to find in the wilderness. Yeah, they take less damage from attacks, from piercing attacks, all that stuff. They can teleport. Okay, Nightmare does 25% hit point damage, 25% of your current resolve will at least do 5 damage. Okay, yeah, it's a little bit weird here, but like they basically do damage based on your resolve. So the more resolve you have, the less damage you take. It's direct HP damage, and I don't think it gets reduced by Nimble. I'm not sure though. Might be reduced by Nimble. And they can sleep bros who then take damage. Let's check in the Nightmare ability. Yeah, doesn't say. Okay, so it would get reduced by Nimble. If we assume that it gets reduced by Nimble, the damage, that is pretty nice. Because these ones do direct HP damage and Battleforge, so these completely ignore armor because they don't attack. So in this case, Nimble would be much better because this damage will be reduced by your Nimble value, right? Your current Nimble value. So it would be reduced by 40% the damage that Alps do. In general, Alps are not too bad of an opponent. A lot of the time you fight them before you have Battleforge or Nimble. If you know how to counter them, if you just net them down and you stay together close to the bannerman who can rally and wake up the sleep bros, and then you have like ranged weapons. So you have pikes, a bunch of pole arms, maybe whip and stuff. And like if you net them down, they can't teleport, all that good stuff. Right, you can stun them too, then they don't teleport as well. So all of these things are pretty nice. So to like control them, right? Control them with nets and fight together in a close formation, and then you will be able to beat them. Nimble is in this specific fight better than Battleforge, but again, most of the time you fight them before you have Nimble or Forge. Okay, next one. Oh, the Unholds, all of them. Unhold. The basic Unhold has a lot of hit points and regenerates. Has not too much defense, but relatively okay attack. After day 90, they do more damage. They have crippling strikes, they are resilient, steel bro. They can fling you, so they throw you through the air, they can attack you, and they can charge stun you. Alright, 15% of their max HP at the start of each turn will be regenerated. Whoopsie. Fling back will toss the target behind the Unhold. Target gets 10% fatigue and suffers falling damage. Yeah, you basically get thrown through the air. So falling damage is direct HP damage. So I think that gets reduced by Nimble, unless it's stated otherwise, but I don't think falling damage does not get reduced by Nimble. Sweep. Sweep does knockback, staggers you, which is bad if you rely on dodge for your defense. It's an AoE attack with 40 to 80 damage, 80% armor efficiency, 40% armor pen. So this is a very specific case. It has low armor efficiency, but relatively high damage with high armor pen, and they have crippling strikes. So even with full padding, sometimes your Battleforge guys get injured when they get hit by them. They can attack twice. The thing is, like, the normal tactic with Unholds is you either net them down, surround them, and poke them to death with pole arms and stuff, or whip them to death and all that kind of stuff. You tank them down with indom tanks if you have indom tanks, and then hit them with ranged weapons like pole arm spikes. Archers are pretty good versus these guys. Ranged weapons in general. So this is kind of the weird thing where normally I would say it is even, specifically in this fight. The thing is, they tend to injure Battleforge more reliably because of the crippling strikes and the relatively high armor pen. The thing is, they have enough the damage is high enough with low armor efficiency, relatively low armor efficiency, so your Battleforgelers normally can tank a bunch of hits before they get to a scary low hit points, although the injuries sometimes are really bad, although they are blunt injuries. The thing is, Nimble is of course less likely to be injured, but with the crippling strikes and the relatively high damage, you can still get injured by them. And Nimble, like, you can't tank, I would say maybe a little bit less hits, because armor still does a great job of protecting you from these attacks. And the stagger is pretty bad versus the dodge that you might have as a Nimble bro. But this is one of these weird cases where I'm not sure if Nimble or Battleforge is better versus these kind of targets. In general, I think if you have a Battleforge frontliner, he will be overall more survivable, but the high armor pen with the crippling strikes makes it very likely that your Battleforge bros get injured, even sometimes on the first hit. But if you have high armor, you can actually tank a bunch of hits before you take serious hit point damage and or injuries sometimes. It's a little bit, because of the high damage variance, it's a little bit swingy. Flinkback does direct HP damage, so that speaks against Forge. I think it gets reduced by Nimble, but I'm not sure. So overall, I would say it's roughly even. I'm not 100% sure, because again, Unholds are normally just a pure DPS check. So if you have a bunch of big two-handed weapons, you just generally kill Unholds before they kill you. And if you don't have high damage output, they will kill you, for sure. And that's kind of the dynamic. Fighting them in small numbers early on, if you have a lot of nets, to reduce their defense and their melee skill. And if you can overwhelm them, maybe because they are relatively slow, 75 initiative only. So overwhelm is nice. Again, that speaks more for the Nimble, because of the higher initiative of the Nimble. Yeah, I would say I can't really decide if Nimble or Battleforge is better versus these, but they are really weak to control effects, getting surrounded and killed. In small numbers, they can be fought early without Nimble or Battleforge. In bigger numbers, you have to have good bros that can kind of face tank them to a certain degree. These guys are the same ones. Frost Unholds, they have... Why does it say Unhold? Okay, guess it's bugged. But Frost Unholds, they have more hit points, as you can see. They have armor. Yeah, they have armor, and they have, yeah, it looks like they have more melee skill, and yeah, they have way more resolve. Uh, wait. How do I? Does it say here? Is it the same value? Ah, fuck it. The wiki is not perfect, but basically the Frost Unholds are the stronger version, the northern version of these ones. They have more hit points, and they, yeah, again, they have more melee skills, so they're also a little bit faster, so they are a little bit harder to deal with, but basically the same thing applies. The Armored Unhold and the Armored Frost Unholds, these are the things that come in the big barbarian camps, and especially the Armored Frost Unholds are a pain in the ass because they have 490 head and body armor, so really hard to deal with. So you have to destroy 500 armor before you can attack the 600 hit points that constantly regenerate. Yeah, again, I would say if you fight these ones are the normal Unholds, like they have only 35 armor, so that's basically nothing. These ones, the Armored Frost Unholds, are really sketchy. And tanking them down with Indom tanks is like kind of mandatory. Throwing nets on them, overwhelm them, bully them with that kind of stuff tends to be a good strategy. The point is they are never alone. They're also chosen and Barbarian Reavers and whatnot around. So yeah, hard to deal with for sure. Also the fact that they are technically immune to fearsome because of the higher resolve. That's another thing. Except for the small beasts who have like relatively low resolve, and they come in large numbers, so fearsome tends to be more efficient. The bigger beasts, they all have ridiculous resolves. Like they are technically immune to fearsome. So almost all beasts are technically immune to fearsome, so they get not countered by fearsome. Okay. Yeah. I think we talked enough about Unholds. Probably overall, like I think a solid strategy is to be faster, overwhelm them, throw nets at them, and kill them with like reach weapons, tank them down with Indom tanks. So probably Nimble is a little bit stronger versus Unholds overall, maybe. But again, like full Battleforge pros can face tank them as well. Next one, Hexens. They don't attack you. They just charm your bros and do all the nasty stuff. So they do not attack you. I think the Hex... Yeah, Hex is a curse. Basically, every damage you do to the Hex does damage to your brother back. Damage will ignore your armor. Hex can't be resisted, and brother can't have more than one Hex on him. I'm not sure if it gets reduced by Nimble. I wouldn't be surprised if it does not get reduced by Nimble. So the only reliable way to kill like a Hex while your brother is hexed is if you have 9 lives. So you can guarantee your brother doesn't get one-shotted, basically. Yeah, pretty nasty opponents, but they don't have an attack. They most of the time come with other beasts like Unholds and Direwolves. Let's talk about Ifrits. Ifrits, again, small, medium, large. They are similar to Unholds. In fact, they are kind of like a pure DPS check again. They have, because they march together, like the small ones, 3 small ones go to a medium one, 3 medium one go to a large one. They can be netted down. That's a nice thing. They have bullseye crippling strikes, so they can throw stuff. They're also immune to fearsome and all the morale stuff, right? Yeah, they are completely immune to that. Cannot be injured. Yeah, can't bleed or poison them, all the stuff. As you can see, they have a single target attack. It is 1 attack because it costs 6 action points. The headbutt, headbutt, yeah, it's basically what they do. They smack you. Has very bad armor efficiency, but really high armor penetration. Combine that with crippling strikes means even your Battleforge pros tend to get injured relatively quick, especially from the big ones, because the big ones do over 100 damage with 50% armor pen. That tends to be an injury. So because of the high armor penetration and the crippling strikes, they tend to be relatively strong versus Battleforge. Yeah, and they merge, as you can see, they merge I said march, right? Doesn't matter. Yeah, they march together, merge, whatever. The next one, they can shoot also. Like the second one, they can make a. If the medium ones and the big one can shoot at you, and then they basically explode into the smaller part. So if a big one shoots at you, you have a bunch of smaller ones that will surround you if the shot hits. Does 70 to 90 damage with 65% armor efficiency and 40% armor penetration. The bigger one does even more damage with 40% armor penetration. So again, I would say because of the high armor pen, like they have really high armor pen and relatively high damage, but low volume of attack, that means Nimble is really good versus these guys because you don't care about the 40% armor pen too much because you have 40% hit point damage reduction. The fact that they have low armor efficiency means even though the high damage is high, Nimble is pretty good at tanking single targets that have high damage, right? So anti-armor pen. So Nimble is excellent versus these guys. Nimble tends to be more resistant to crippling strikes because again 40% hit point damage reduction. It is really hard to injure Nimble bros that have high hit points. Again, they can only hit or shoot once per turn, so that means Battleforge tends to be a little bit worse versus Ifrits. But to be honest, again, it's a DPS check, so as long as you have enough damage output, doesn't matter too much what kind of armor you have. But especially early on when you have maybe not the highest DPS, maybe not the best weapons, you have a bunch of Nimble bros, Nimble is really nice versus Ifrits. Yeah, so versus Ifrits, Nimble pretty good. Next one, Schwarz. Nasty opponents. Relatively rare. They are living in the forest and you can get in the forest towns forest contracts to kill the Schwarz. They have crippling strikes as as expected. Again, they have negative defense, but they have relatively high melee skill, so they have a decent chance of hitting you. Relatively high, like it's not the highest. So a good way of to deal with them is to completely surround them, break their shields, and strike with pole arms or other ranged weapons from behind. But don't stay in a straight line because they have a stab attack, right? The uproot. The uproot does 70 to 100 damage with 85% armor efficiency, 50% armor staggers, and hits 3 tiles in a row. So it's kind of like the stab attack from the greatsword, right? So if you don't stay right behind your frontliner, you cannot get hit by the uproot. So surrounding them and having like the high defense bros in the front with like who maybe do shield walls is really efficient because again, like versus shield walls, your bros are unlikely to get hit by the attacks, and your backliners can break them. The thing is, if you have broken the shield, which basically you use the break shield ability, Shard Shield has 32 durability, so you have to overcome the 32 durability. Axes are pretty good with Shards, especially with Mastery, because with the 200 axes you just tend to break the shield in one attack and then you can attack the hit point directly. The Schwarz, I don't know, I think they have something ridiculous like 90% damage reduction or something if their shield is up. So they basically don't take any damage if you don't break the shield. So breaking the shield is the important thing to do. The thing is, every time you attack the hit points directly when the shield is broken, they will summon a sapling. The sapling is not in this thing, which basically spawns a smaller shroud, who does also relatively high damage. Again, we have the shroud only attacks once, 5 action points. Has only 7 action points. So the Shrats have high damage with okay armor efficiency, 50% armor pen. So Battleforge tends to take a lot of damage, especially with the crippling strikes. You catch an injury really fast if you have Battleforge, even if you have Battleforge. Nimble tends to be better versus Shrats because of the higher injury resistance versus the crippling strikes. Also, it's not a high volume of attack, it's low volume with high damage instances, so Nimble tends to be better versus Schwarz. Yeah, so again, be prepared, tough fight. If you're not prepared, might lose a bro. They are immune to nets. They can be routed though, although they have 200 resolve, so it's really unlikely. Even with fearsome, you're just rolling on your 5%. They are immune to fearsome, basically. Yeah. Okay, set doesn't say the saplings. I am a little bit disappointed. Maybe the saplings. Here's the sapling, right? Okay, spawns the sapling who has like lower hit points, but has a weak uproot, which does hits one tile and does again like relatively high armor penetration damage. So Battleforge is weak versus these kind of opponents. They have crippling strikes as well. Same thing. Same thing as the big shroud. If you do hit point damage, the shield is down. They spawn smaller shrouds, the saplings, and then you have to kill these. So surrounding them so they can't spawn saplings is a really efficient way to dealing with them. The same can be done with the big Ifrits. If you completely surround them, they can only split in one medium, not in two mediums. Right? Really efficient there. So Nimble, better versus Ifrits, better versus Schwarz. Lindworms. Nasty opponents. Come in small numbers like the Schwarz, but they have ridiculous stats. Like they are super nasty. Look at their attacks. Probably the strongest common enemy type in the game, I would say. Strongest single entities. If you hit them, if you are direct adjacent to them and you hit them, you get acidic blood. So every time you do at least 10 damage to the hit points with melee, you lose 10% of your armor for each turn for 3 turns. So this will destroy Battleforge armor really, really fast. So right away, because of this mechanic, Battleforge tends to be worse. We have the Gorge attack, which costs only 4 action points. They have 7 action points, so they can't attack twice. But they have multiple, as you can see, they have the head and the tail, and they have multiple attack moves. The Gorge is from the head, does 80 to 140 damage with 100%, 150% armor efficiency and 40% armor. Pen has 2 tiles of range. So super high damage with high armor efficiency and high armor pen. These guys, these attacks, they go through Battleforge right away and highly likely to injure them. Also, they have fearsome reach advantage. They have, of course, underdog. They are resilient. So these things super nasty, really, really nasty. Move the tail. Yeah, the tail can move as the head, and the head can also move. And then here are the tail attacks. I think the head doesn't have zone of control, only the tail has zone of control, so you can move your bros around. The tail slam split does high damage, will hit one target and the entity behind it, does daze and stun. So basically, if you can, like the tactic versus Lindworms is one tactic is you tank them down with tanks who have like high defense, and then you permanently do shield wall, and you don't stand directly behind them, so you can attack the tail from a safe position, basically. And you can surround the Lindworm and attack them. Then you have the sweep slam, which is kind of like an AoE, can hit up to 3 targets next to each other, which is kind of like the AoE from the Greatsword, the round swing. Again, high direct damage with high armor efficiency, high armor pen. Then you have the tail slam, which is the complete round swing, which hit all 6 targets around. Again, super high damage. So Nimble tends to be better versus Lindworms because of their super high damage and because Nimble doesn't lose too much armor when they are right in front of the Lindworms. Also the armor efficiency and the armor pen are really painful for Battleforge bros. I must say, you can punish them also with whips and goblin pikes because they can be bled to death, the Lindworms. That's kind of a funny thing. You can basically do the goblin pike trick where you move one tile, attack with the goblin pike, make them bleed, go one tile back. all that good stuff. They have fearsome, so even Nimble struggles versus them. So like, I think, long story short, no matter if you're Battle Fortune or Nimble, you can't tank a lot of hits from Lindworms. If you get hit once, you're probably injured. If you get hit twice, you're probably dead. If you get hit the third time, you are dead. Most of the time, like the damage is so high from these things. So tanking them with shield tanks down is good. Shield wall is pretty good, whereas them Indom doesn't do much. You just are more better off if you kind of like face tank them with shield walls. They are relatively slow, so Overwhelm is really efficient versus them. They have negative range defense, so the high damage output from bros is pretty good versus them. Bleeding them with pikes, with goblin pikes, and with the whips can be really efficient. And there's also a strategy where you have a naked archer who just runs away and can kite multiple Lindworms away. You have to be careful though. This is a very special tactic. If you are not 100% what you're doing, you might lose a brother. So Lindworms, very, very nasty opponents, very strong. Nimble tends to be better versus Lindworms than not. Okay, next one, EG Rock. EG Rock will regenerate, has the charge ability. Gore does direct damage with bad armor efficiency but high armor pen and does a stagger. Also has crippling strikes. Teleports the EG Rock around. Yeah, so this thing will basically spirit walk away and then charge you with the Gore attack. Which will basically, this is a big Unhold with like much more HP. It's a legendary opponent. You get the EG Rock armor from this thing. Has Steel Brow, has the regeneration, is resilient, and has crippling strikes. Yeah, so we have relatively high damage with, it's an AoE attack with bad armor efficiency but high armor penetration. So versus the EG Rock, because it can hit only once per turn with high damage, Nimble tends to be better versus this. Overall, I would say. But even like the Nimble bros, this damage is so high if you get hit multiple times by this thing, it's pretty bad. The good thing is Battleforge, because of the bad armor efficiency, Battleforge tends to be also nice versus these guys. I'm not 100% sure if Battleforge or Nimble is better versus this guy. The thing is, it's relatively slow, only 95 initiative, so having Overwhelm kind of counters this guy. Of course, you can bring down the 95 melee skill significantly. Having fast bros with Overwhelm is kind of nice. You can't root him down, you can't stun him, but you can bleed him. So again, whips, goblin pikes tend to be really efficient. In general, ranged weapons or reach weapons are really efficient versus the EG Rock. Yeah, so Overwhelm pretty good. Nimble Overwhelm, guys. I'm just gonna say this, don't bring your archers. This guy always charges your archers. And because of the high melee skill, if the archers don't have high melee defense, they just get wrecked by this thing. And because of the high damage, and your archer will probably die in like 2 or 3 hits. Like, it's really likely to lose an archer versus the EG Rock. Don't bring archers versus the EG Rock, it can backfire badly. Try to get high defense bros that either have a lot of armor or are really fast and can overwhelm this thing. I would say Battleforge and Nimble are pretty even, and like as soon as, again, it's a giant DPS check, it's kind of like the same as fighting like, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 Unholds. If you have a big two-hander team that does a lot of damage and you have a couple of fast bros who might be able to overwhelm him, it's not a difficult fight. And the last one is the Kraken. Again, the Kraken is a special fight. I made a video on how to fight the Kraken. The Devour attack will instantly kill your brother. And these tentacles, they will move up and snare one of your brothers and pull him to the Kraken. And you have to unensnare, it's basically root, unensnare your bros. And then hit the tentacles, or you can also attack the Kraken directly. The Kraken itself can't move and has only 1 tile of reach, so you can fuck him up with reach weapons. Bite attack can only be done once per turn, has high damage with good armor efficiency and armor pen, also inflicts bleeding. So Nimble tends to be pretty bad, especially versus the bleeding. versus the Kraken, because like high damage with bleeding, bad, but also even the Battleforge guys can't tank too many hits from these guys, but at least you are less likely to catch yourself a bleed with the bite attack. Again, giant DPS check, there is a special strategy how to defeat Krakens. There are many videos on how to defeat Krakens. I recommend watching those. I'm not sure. I don't think Nimble or Battleforge are that there is a huge difference in between. It's much similar to the Ichirok, where it's like these a legendary opponent gets beaten by tactic rather than by Battleforge having Battleforge on Nimble. Okay, these were all the beasts. Did I miss something? No. So to conclude, spiders, super weak. Doesn't matter, as soon as you have Nimble or Battleforge, you're gonna be good. All of the small enemies, that come in large numbers. So Direwolf, Frenzy Direwolf, Hyena, Frenzied Hyena, Nachtzehrer, Snakes. All of them counter Nimble, right? You want Battleforge versus the small beasts that come in large numbers, because they will rip apart Nimble really fast. On the other side, the bigger opponents who only attack once per turn and have like a low rate of attacks, that have relatively high armor pen in combination with crippling strikes, tend to be much stronger versus Battleforge than Nimble in a lot of cases. Bone plating can be really nice to mitigate Lindworm hits or Shroud hits or even Unhold hits. So having bone plating on your forge armor, or on the other side the fur padding to reduce the high armor ignore damage from these opponents is the way to go. And if you have the fur padding, you tend to take way less damage from these strong high armor pen opponents. But generally speaking, Nimble is probably better versus most of the bigger opponents, bigger beasts in the game. Dude, was a really long video. I hope you didn't mind hearing to my talks. I did a lot of rambling. I'm done for today now. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you had fun, learned something. If you're a newer player, maybe you ask yourself always the question, what should I do? What kind of armor should I do versus certain opponents? Yeah, guys, please like, comment, and subscribe, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.